Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about black fur. I asked you over on Instagram to let me know which fur colors you struggle with the most. So, this is going to actually be a four-part series. We're starting out with black fur, but we're going to follow up with three more of my most commonly asked about fur colors. To start things off, I'm going to go through the tools that you'll need. As far as brushes go, my all time favorite are the Princeton Velvet Touch, but there are definitely more affordable options out there, so don't feel like you have to use this brand. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using a filbert brush. This one is a size 8. You'll also need a round brush. This is by Artify in a size 10, and a few smaller round brushes as well. I used the size 4 of this group. Lastly, for brushes, especially if you're a beginner, it's really helpful to have these detail brushes. I have here a liner brush and a long round brush. And really, either one of these works well. You don't need both of them. I will also be using this palette paper by Canson, but you can use whatever you're most comfortable with as far as palettes go. A towel to wipe your brushes off, and two clean cups of water. I never wash these cups, obviously. Before we talk about the paint that you'll need, let's take a look at our reference photo. I think a lot of the reason why black fur can be tricky is that it can be really hard to see the values that are within the fur because it is so dark. So I like to start off by making some adjustments to the brightness and contrast just to get a better feel for the values within the fur. And feel free to use whatever photo editing tool you have. You can even just edit it on your phone. For the sake of time and for clarity, I am just going to be focusing on this little square patch of fur that I cropped from that photo. Okay, so on to the paint colors. I am a rule breaker and I use straight up black. This is Mars black, and for my blues, I'm using turquoise blue, cobalt blue hue, and I didn't show it here, but I also used mixing white and titanium white. I want to establish my base layer, so I'm going to go in with that Mars black and just cover up the canvas entirely. We're going to be working our way from dark to light, and we really don't want any of that white canvas showing through. Whenever I rinse off my brush, which I try to do pretty frequently, I use one cup as my dirty water and one as my clean water. And I think it goes without mention, but you can use whatever surface that you prefer to work with. I usually use canvas for my paintings. This is canvas panel, but use whatever you're most comfortable with. I have a bad habit of mixing my paints with my brush, so just ignore that. I really should be using a palette knife. I'm mixing my black, the two blues, and a little bit of mixing white. So you should still consider this step to be the foundational layer. And I'm still using my filbert brush because I really want to keep things very general. We are just blocking in where we're seeing the lights on top of the shadows. Keep in mind that acrylic paint does look lighter when it's wet and then it dries down to be darker. So it's just something you always want to be conscious of as you're mixing your colors. The nice thing about this shape of brush is that I can lay down color in really big chunky sections, but I can also turn it on its side if I want to get a little bit more precise or a little bit thinner. Even though this is a foundational layer, it's still really important to pay attention to the direction of the fur growth. So I've added more mixing white into my paint color, and now I am getting a little bit more precise, but still staying pretty general with these big chunky sections. If this was an actual painting composition, you might have a sketch or something that you're following, but I actually don't sketch out my paintings, so this is exactly what I do even when I'm doing something that's a finished piece. And as I get lighter and lighter, I'm adding small amounts of titanium white. I should also add, if it's not already clear, but I wait between layers for them to dry before I add more paint on top. So now I'm bringing in that large round brush and getting a little bit more detailed. We're still pretty rough. We're not doing any really small strands yet. We're just defining those areas even more and really emphasizing the direction of the hair growth and the flow. Now we're going back to the beginning as far as the values. So the darkest one, which in my case I'm using pure black, and now I can get a little bit more detailed and really define where those really deep shadows are. I'm using the smaller size 4 round brush here, but honestly, I probably could have even stayed with that large one for this stage. We're starting to add in a few more hair-like strokes than we had before. I know that we're jumping a little bit ahead here, but I had a little bit of video where my hand was blocking a good amount of what I was doing, so I had to cut that bit out. And we're working pretty much with the same exact order of things, same exact shades. So from dark to light, just really going through and refining certain areas where you think that there can be a little bit more detail. Can you tell that these long form videos are new for me? Because I sure can. My angles are really not helping this process. So I ended up going back to that larger brush because I was looking at my work and realizing I think that I was getting a little bit too in the weeds on the details. And this is a pretty common mistake. So I'm glad that it happened so I can show you guys how I correct it. My go to when this happens is to just scale up my brush. It kind of forces your brain to look at things from a bigger scale and not focus in on those tiny little details. It's just a matter of going through sections with, I would say, like a medium neutral tone and this bigger brush and kind of just balancing things out a little bit. And once I feel like I'm in a better spot, then I can go back to doing exactly what I was doing before with that small brush, but just with my big brush. And the beauty of acrylic is that you can keep layering and layering if something's not quite right, if you need to fix something, adjust anything. It's a very forgiving medium, so feel free to keep going and going until it's right. And you can see as I'm making these little shapes, I'm mostly using the very tip of the brush. So at this point, I feel comfortable going back to my small size brush and very minimally adding detail. It's really hard to hold back sometimes. There is so much back and forth in this process, so don't feel like this all has to just be a one shot thing. I definitely go back and forth many, many times. All right, so here's how we're looking at this point. Now comes the fun part, at least I think it's pretty fun. So we are going to be glazing, and you can use glazing as a technique to accomplish a few different things. For this one, we're going to be enhancing the shadows and kind of just helping everything to sort of meld together a little bit more. So I am just mixing pretty much half and half of my clean water with just the black paint. And I sped this part up so that you can really see the impact of what we're doing here. It can be hard to tell that anything's happening as you're doing it in real time. And I'm just going through and just deepening any areas of shadow that I feel like need to be a little bit more enhanced. And always, always make sure that when you're layering, whether it's glazing or regular application, again, that your layers are dry in between. Otherwise, you will risk lifting up pigment from the previous layers. All right, so I think I lied because this last part is my actual real favorite, and it is going back on top of what we've done with the glazing with the finer details. It's kind of like we're just bringing certain areas into focus. Because when you think about looking at something that has multiple layers in real life, like fur, not every single layer or piece is going to be in focus to your eye. So we do want some areas to be slightly more blurry than others, and it just makes it look a little bit more realistic. This reference photo also had a few little wispy hairs, so those are my absolute last step and small detail. And here's
to
where you
this
can
fur.
use those really tiny detail brushes. I just chose to keep using the same brush. And we are done with
And
our
I could have
black
even used
fur.
just one shade of blue, it would have made it even simpler.
And if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. And follow me if you want to see the other
I
three
hope you
of
found
the
this
fur
helpful, and
series.
I'll see you next time.